When I was 18, I picked up a babysitting gig to make some extra cash. By the next morning, cops were yanking me out of bed. The girl claimed I assaulted her. I spent months behind bars before a single faulty camera, and a neighbor's recording blew the whole thing wide open. So, hey Reddit, I never thought I'd end up dumping my story here, but after everything that went down, I need to put this somewhere. One ordinary night turned into the worst 7 months of my life, and somehow, I'm still here. I want people to understand how quickly a lie can wreck a person's world, and how painfully slow the truth crawls back. I was a broke college freshman when it all started, always hunting for side jobs. Babysitting wasn't something I planned on doing, it just sort of happened. My mom's friend, Mrs. Miller, needed someone urgently one evening and I said yes. It went smoothly. The kids loved me, and after that she called me whenever her usual sitter backed out. Her kids, Tommy, 7, and Emma, 5, were honestly awesome. No screaming, no chaos, just two little clowns who thought I was some kind of hero because I let them stay up a tiny bit late and built Lego towers tall enough to graze the ceiling fan. They used to call me Big Bro Cameron, and I won't lie, I liked it. So when Mrs. Miller phoned that night, I didn't think twice. Sweetheart, I know it's last minute, but my sitter canceled. I wouldn't ask if I wasn't desperate, she said, sounding stressed. I checked my planner, just a psych quiz to study for. Yeah, I can do it, I told her. What time? 7 to 9:30. I'll pay extra. Deal. I grabbed a hoodie, stuffed my backpack with my notes, and walked over. The Millers lived in a warm-looking 2-story house with a white porch and one of those seasonal flags glowing under the porch light. That night it read, "Bless this home." When I got inside, the kids were already in their pajamas, zoned out in front of a cartoon marathon. Mrs. Miller was half ready, half frazzled, hair curled, heels dangling from one hand, purse exploding on the couch. "You're a lifesaver, Cameron," she said while digging for her keys. "Dinner's done," they brushed their teeth. "Just keep him alive until I get back." I laughed. "I think I can manage." "Oh, and Susan might come home later," she added, already halfway to the door. "She's out with friends but said she might stop by." My stomach dropped at that name. Susan, her older daughter, 19, technically just a year older than me, was complicated. She flirted with everyone, but with me it was constant, unmistakable, and honestly uncomfortable. She'd text me while I babysat, "How's my little brother?" Or want company while the kids sleep. I'd ignore most of it or keep things formal. Then one night, a couple months earlier, she actually showed up while I was babysitting. Said she needed someone to talk to. The kids were already asleep, so I figured whatever, no harm. Then she told me she liked me. Liked me. When I gently told her I didn't feel that way, she fell apart. Full meltdown, crying, yelling, pacing. "You don't even care," she shouted. "You think you're better than me because you're in college." It was uncomfortable as hell. I told her she was going too far and she stormed out. A week later she acted like none of that had ever happened, smiling, chatty, even complimenting my haircut. It creeped me out, but I tried to let it go. I figured she'd gotten over it. Anyway, around 9 that night, the kids started nodding off on the couch. I carried Tommy to bed, then Emma, who mumbled, "Night, big bro," before she knocked out completely. I was sweeping up the kids' snack crumbs when I heard the front door click open. Susan stepped inside. She didn't say anything, just stood there staring at me for a few seconds from the doorway. Same blue eyes, but no playful grin this time. Her face was tight, like she'd been crying or maybe trying not to. "Hey," I said, trying to keep things normal. "Your mom mentioned you might come back tonight." She didn't respond. She walked right past me and headed upstairs. Slow, heavy steps. Didn't glance at me once. Okay then, I told myself. Bad night, not my issue. I finished tidying up, then sat on the couch and put on a random office rerun. Around 9:30, headlights washed through the living room window. Mrs. Miller was home. She came in glowing, makeup perfect, buzzing with post-dinner energy. "You're amazing, Cameron," she said, tossing her purse onto the counter. "Kids were great," I replied. "Perfect." She counted some bills from her wallet and handed them to me with a warm smile. "I owe you huge." "It's fine," I said. I grabbed my backpack, told her goodnight, and headed out. The night air was cool, the street quiet. My car sat under the streetlight and everything felt calm, just another easy babysitting shift. I got home, showered, cracked open my psych textbook, and didn't think twice. Nothing weird, nothing off. If you'd asked me then, I would have said it was an unremarkable night. No hints of what was coming. Just 2 sleeping kids and me watching TV. The next morning tore that normalcy apart. It started with pounding. Hard, furious knocking that shook the door. Definitely not delivery man tapping. I rolled over half asleep, assuming someone needed my dad. Then I heard my mom shouting my name from downstairs. "Cameron, get down here right now!" Her voice didn't sound right. It sounded scared. I stumbled out of bed, still in sweatpants, hair a mess. When I reached the bottom of the stairs, I stopped cold. 2 police officers stood in the doorway. Full uniforms, serious expressions. My mom looked like she'd seen a ghost. My dad stood behind her with his arms folded like he was bracing for bad news. "Cameron L. Carson," one officer said. Yeah, you're under arrest." I actually laughed at first because it had to be some kind of insane mistake. "Wait, what?" Before I could say anything else, they spun me around and cuffed me. The metal was icy against my wrists. My mom gasped and tried to grab me. "What is happening? He's just a kid." The taller cop muttered something about suspected assault, but my brain was buzzing too loud to process his words. I tried to explain, to say it had to be wrong, but they kept repeating that anything I said could be used against me. My dad's face flushed red. "What the hell did you do?" he snapped. "I didn't do anything," I yelled, but no one believed me. They marched me outside while the neighbors peeked through blinds. Curtains twitched. I could feel the judgment crawling across my skin. My heart was pounding so violently I could barely think. I'd never even been near a police car before. The inside smelled like vinyl and bleach, and it made my stomach twist. At the station, they booked me. Fingerprints, mugshot, everything. Then they dumped me in a tiny interrogation room with a metal table, 2 chairs, and a mirrored wall. I sat there trying to imagine what sort of mix-up could have caused this. Maybe they meant another Cameron. Maybe something got reported wrong. After what felt like forever, a detective walked in. Mid-40s, tie crooked, eyes tired. He carried a thick folder that made my stomach sink. He gave me a smile that wasn't friendly. "Relax, Cameron," he said, taking the seat across from me. "We just want to hear your side." "Side of what?" I asked. He opened the folder and looked straight at me. "What happened last night at the Millers?" My chest tightened. What happened? Nothing happened. "You were babysitting," he said casually. "Kids went to sleep. Susan came home around 8. You remember that?" "I didn't look at the clock," I said. "She came home and went straight upstairs. That's all." He jotted something down. "That's all?" "Yeah." I didn't even talk to her. He exhaled loudly, like he'd heard this a million times. "Well, Susan says otherwise. She says you cornered her in the kitchen. Says you made her uncomfortable, that you said things that scared her." I just stared at him. "What?" he continued. "She also says you did something and threatened her when she tried to get away." I actually let out a disbelieving laugh because it was so outrageous. That never happened. She went upstairs. I didn't leave the living room. The detective nodded slowly like he was humoring me. He slid over a paper cup of water. "Look, I get that people screw up, if you admit to some. Things small. Maybe you misread the situation. We can help you. Judges like honesty." And that's when I realized he wasn't there to listen. He was trying to box me in. "I didn't do anything," I said louder. His tone shifted. "Susan's story hasn't changed once. You sure you want to stick with yours?" Sweat rolled down my back. "I'm telling the truth," I said. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "The thing about the truth, Cameron, is it doesn't always match the evidence. You sure you want to keep digging?" "What evidence?" I shot back. "She's lying." He didn't answer. He just gathered his notes and walked out. When they finally released me on bail that evening, my mom was waiting. Her eyes were puffy, worried. My dad stood next to her, arms crossed, jaw clenched. The drive home was silent until my dad exploded. "What the hell is wrong with you?" "I didn't do anything," I repeated. My voice cracked, which somehow made me sound guilty. "Then why would she say it?" he shouted. "Why lie?" "I don't know." My mom turned around from the front seat, tears sliding down her face. "Cameron, please just tell us the truth," she begged. "I am telling the truth." We pulled into the driveway. My dad slammed the car door so hard the whole vehicle shook. My mom stayed back, grabbed my hand, and looked at me like she was terrified. "I know you didn't do this," she whispered. "We'll fix it. I promise." Those words were the only thing that kept me from falling apart. But promises don't mean much in a small town. By the time we reached the front porch, I could already see neighbors outside, whispering, pretending not to glance my way. Word spreads faster than weather here. That night, I sat on my bed staring at my phone, waiting for someone, anyone, to message me, a friend, a classmate, even an acquaintance. Nobody did. It's wild how your whole world can collapse without a single spark. I learned that day innocence doesn't matter. People only need a whisper to decide who you are. By the end of the week, everyone knew. The rumors moved faster than truth ever could. In a town this tiny, gossip doesn't travel, it detonates. You can't go 3 houses down without someone knowing your entire life story, and mine had become the only thing people felt like discussing. At first, I kept telling myself it would blow over, that people would wait to hear both sides. That was naive. The neighbors who used to smile and wave acted like I didn't exist. Mrs. Kinnear from across the street would pull her kids inside whenever I walked by. Even my college emailed me saying I was temporarily suspended pending the investigation. That one gutted me. I'd worked so hard to get into that school, and just like that, the door slammed shut. I tried calling the people I thought were my friends. Most didn't pick up. The one who did, my best friend Jason, answered on my third try. "Dude, I heard," he said softly. "Finally, someone I thought I could rely on." "Jason, it's not true," I said quickly. "You know me, I'd never—" "I know," he said sharply, then his voice dropped. "But listen, things are getting bad. Everyone's talking. My parents are freaking out. I just think, maybe don't call me for a bit." I froze. "So that's it?" He let out a breath. "It's not that I don't believe you, man, I have to think about my own reputation. You know how people are." That line hit harder than a punch. "I get it," I lied. "Take care." He hung up, and that was the end of years of friendship in under 2 minutes. After that, I stopped trying. There wasn't anyone left to call anyway. Tension at home grew thicker every day. My dad barely spoke except to bark orders or push me to confess to something I didn't do. He started drinking more, pacing the living room like he was ready to explode. One night, he finally did. He stormed into my room while I was scrolling through old messages, trying to distract myself. His face was flushed, his jaw locked. "I just talked to Mark from work," he said. "He told me everyone's talking about you. About us. You've humiliated this family." I stood up, trying to keep my voice steady. "Dad, I didn't do anything." "Then why would she lie?" he shouted, slamming his hand against the doorframe. "What does she get out of that?" "I don't know. Maybe she's upset, or—" He cut me off. "You always have excuses. You're not staying here anymore. Pack your things." I stared at him, waiting for my mom to say something. But she was behind him, hands trembling. "Dad, where am I supposed to go? Anywhere but here." He walked away. My mom stepped closer, eyes full of tears. "He's angry, Cameron," she whispered. "He's just scared." "Scared of what? That people will think his son is a monster." She didn't say anything else. She just hugged me tight. "Come with me," she murmured. She drove in silence, taking back roads until we reached the edge of town. Behind a line of old pine trees sat a small one-story house with peeling paint and a crooked shutter. "This was my mom's place," she said softly, handing me a key. "No one's lived here since she passed. It's not much, but you can stay here for now. At least until things settle down." I didn't know what to say. I wanted to tell her I couldn't take it, but her expression said it wasn't up for debate. She helped me carry a few bags inside. The house smelled like dust and old wood, with furniture draped in sheets and floorboards that squeaked under every step. But it was quiet, and for the first time in days, I could breathe. She opened a few windows and let sunlight in. "I'll bring groceries tomorrow," she said softly, "and I'll start looking for a better lawyer." "Mom," I said, voice cracking. "You believe me, right?" She looked at me like I'd asked something ridiculous. "Of course I do," she said. "You're my son. I know who you are." Those words hit harder than anything. When she left, I sat on the old couch listening to the house creak with the wind. It felt strange, lonely, but strangely peaceful. The first night was rough. Every noise made me jump. I barely slept, replaying everything. The arrest, the interrogation. Susan's distant stare that night. It looped non-stop like a nightmare I couldn't escape. The next morning, true to her word, my mom arrived with groceries. Milk, bread, cans of soup, and a cheap, prepaid phone. She tried smiling, but her eyes told me she was exhausted. She stayed for a bit, sitting beside me while I ate. She mostly said small things like "try to rest," or "I'll be back soon." She was holding herself together just for my sake. Days passed quietly. My mom visited every couple days, always checking the street before knocking. My dad never came, not even once. The only thing holding me together was my mom's belief in me. Every time she looked at me, she saw her son. Not the monster the town whispered about. When everyone else turned away, her voice was the only one that still felt real. About a month after the arrest, I had my preliminary hearing. The actual trial wouldn't start until months later. I remember sitting in the courthouse hallway, palms sweating, stomach twisting. Every time the double doors opened, I saw familiar faces, neighbors, teachers there to watch like it was a show. When they called my name, my legs felt like lead. The courtroom was full. Susan sat at the witness table with her lawyer, hair neatly tied back, wearing a plain sweater that made her look fragile. I'd never seen her so put together. When she took the stand, she started crying almost instantly. Real or rehearsed, I couldn't tell, and more. She claimed that when she came home that night, I had been waiting in the kitchen, cornered her, blocked the exit, said things that made her too terrified to scream. She said she ran upstairs as soon as she could get away. Her voice cracked at all the perfect moments, and the jury watched her like she was made of glass. Then she added the part that made my stomach twist, how she used to think I liked her but realized I was just pretending to be nice to get close. The same line she'd used months earlier, completely rewritten. I gripped the table so hard my knuckles turned white. My lawyer, Frank, a tired-looking guy who never quite seemed confident, whispered, "Don't react." But listening to her retell that night like it was some scripted tragedy, watching everyone nod like her story fit perfectly, made me feel like I was standing outside my own life, powerless to stop any of it. Then came the parade of so-called witnesses. One after another, people stepped up, pretending they'd always sensed something off about me. A woman from our block said, "I never trusted him." A guy I barely remembered from high school claimed I acted too nice around kids. Someone from college even said I'd been quiet lately, as if not talking was evidence of guilt. None of them had facts, just gut feelings. And apparently, that was enough. When it was finally our turn, Frank stood and said, "Your Honor, we believe the ring camera outside the house may have recorded relevant movement that night." The whole room shifted. For a moment, hope flickered, something that could prove I was telling the truth. But before he could continue, Mrs. Miller, looking exhausted and shaken, took the stand. Her voice wavered. "The ring camera hasn't worked for weeks." A storm cracked the lens. My husband was supposed to replace it. My heart sank straight into my stomach. The prosecutor, a polished guy, W.I., a flawless haircut, leapt at it. "How convenient," he said loudly, making sure the jury heard every syllable. The one piece of evidence that could have cleared everything, gone. Frank objected, but the judge dismissed it with a wave, and that was that. No footage, no way to prove I never left the living room, nothing but her story versus mine. When I took the stand, I told the truth, every detail. How Susan walked in, didn't speak, and went straight upstairs. How I stayed in the living room the entire evening. How Mrs. Miller came home later, paid me, and treated it like any other night. I tried to sound steady, but every time I spoke, I felt Susan staring at me, expression blank and cold, like she wanted me to falter. The prosecutor tore into me. "So, you're asking the jury to believe she fabricated this?" "Yes," I said. "Why would she do that?" I hesitated, then said it, "Because I rejected her a few months ago." The courtroom erupted with murmurs. Susan's face twisted into a perfect look of shock, as if I'd just insulted her in the worst way. The prosecutor raised an eyebrow. "So, your explanation is a rejected crush?" I wanted to shout that it was the truth. But he didn't want truth. None of them did. By closing arguments, I knew the outcome already. The prosecutor painted me as a symbol, a betrayal of trust, a threat to families, a monster hiding behind a babysitter's smile. I wasn't a person anymore. I was a cautionary tale. Frank did his best. He talked about the missing evidence, the gaps in Susan's story, the lack of anything physical. He pointed out all the reasons to doubt. But doubt didn't matter when the entire town already had its mind made up and a crying 19-year-old girl played the perfect victim. The jury left to deliberate. They were gone maybe an hour, barely time for a sandwich. When they returned, none of them looked at me. The foreman stood, cleared his throat, and said the word, "Guilty." Everything stopped. I felt nothing. My mom let out this small broken sob behind me, like she was trying to hold herself together. My dad stood up, stiff as a board, and walked right out of the room without looking at me once. The judge's voice sounded muffled as he read the sentence. 4 years in state prison. 4 years for something I never did. A few weeks later, I was back in front of him for the official sentencing. Same result. Then, a week after that, I was on a bus headed for prison, ankles shackled, wrists cuffed. The guy beside me kept humming under his breath. Every bump in the road made the chains clatter. When we rolled through the prison gates, the noise hit me first, slamming. Doors, guards yelling, voices bouncing off concrete walls. The first week was hell. Constant shouting, metal scraping, footsteps echoing. No silence, not even at night. The whole place smelled like sweat and harsh cleaning chemicals. I was 18 and completely unprepared. The guards didn't explain anything. They just shouted commands, hands at your sides, eyes front, don't speak. You learned by watching others. If you messed up, you discovered the consequences fast. By day 3, everyone already knew what I'd been convicted of. In prison, information travels instantly. I was the babysitter guy. That was all they needed before the story twisted into something even worse. "Hey, that's the babysitter," someone muttered as I passed in the lunch line. Another inmate snickered. "Better keep him away from the new fish." I tried to block it out, but there's no hiding in a place where no one has anywhere else to go. The first beating came without warning. I was in the chow hall, tray in hand, when someone slammed their shoulder into me hard enough to send food flying. I turned around, instinctively wanting to say sorry, but the guy Jay Ust grinned. "Watch yourself, babysitter." Before I could respond, he shoved me again. Then a fist smashed into my cheek. Everything went bright for a second. I hit the ground while the tray skidded across the tiles. The guards just stood there watching. One of them even laughed. I staggered back to my cell, bleeding and humiliated. That night, I didn't sleep. I just waited for the next hit. A few days later, it happened again in the yard. 2 guys boxed me in, whispering insults. I tried to walk away, but one yanked my shirt and said, "You think you're above us?" before slamming me against the fence. After that, it was a blur. I must have blacked out because I woke up in the infirmary with a swollen eye and a split lip. The nurse didn't say a word, just handed me pills and waved me out the door. That's when I realized no one was coming to save me. Then I met Rudy. He was older, maybe late 40s, gray in his beard, and this strangely calm presence in a place where calm didn't exist. The first time we spoke, I was in the laundry room trying to scrub blood out of my shirt. "You keep scrubbing like that, you're just grinding it in," he said without looking up. I wasn't sure if he was mocking me. Then he glanced over. "Relax, kid. I'm not here to swing on you." That's how it began, slow and simple. He never asked about my case, and I didn't ask about his. We just worked next to each other. Over time, he started offering bits of wisdom. "Head down," he told me once. "Talk enough to not seem weird, not enough to seem suspicious, and don't feed the rumor mill." Eventually, I learned he'd been fighting his conviction for years. "The system doesn't defend you," he said. "It processes you." Then he told me the only rule that mattered: you survive by remembering who you are, not who they say you are. Rudy became the closest thing to steady ground in that place. One afternoon. He caught me staring into space. "You're thinking about how life used to be," he said. "Everyone does it first." I nodded. He sighed. "Don't. The past isn't here. If you live in it, this place will break you." It hit harder than I wanted to admit. A few weeks later, rumors spread that Rudy was getting transferred. Different facility, different state. He didn't seem shocked. "They move you when you get too settled," he said. On the day he left, he handed me a small, folded paper, blank, and said one line, "Don't let the truth die just because they buried you." Then he was gone. For weeks, those words echoed every time I wanted to give up. So I started doing what he taught me. Every night, I wrote in a notebook my mom sent. Every detail from that night at the Millers. Times, sounds, conversations. I didn't know if it meant anything, but it was something to hold on to. Life didn't magically improve, but I grew tougher. The bruises healed, the stares didn't. But I learned something: they could cage me, beat me, call me whatever they wanted, but the truth was still mine. And thanks to Rudy, I wasn't letting it disappear. 7 months. That's how long I stayed locked up before everything shifted. 7 months of steel bars, concrete, and nights staring at the ceiling, wondering if anyone would ever believe me. Then, one afternoon, a guard came by. Carson, visitor. I assumed it was my mom. She visited every 2 weeks without fail. But when I walked into the visitation room, I froze. My mom was there, yes, but next to her sat a man I'd never seen. Clean suit, files stacked neatly in front of him, eyes sharp. "Cameron," my mom said, hugging me. "This is Eric Wallace, your new attorney." Eric stood and shook my hand. "I've reviewed your case," he said. "To be frank, it's a disaster. You were failed, by your lawyer, the police, everyone. I don't intend to let this continue." I sat across from him, stunned. "Why now? Why help me?" He nodded toward my mom. She didn't stop calling. 3 times a week until I agreed to look. My mom's eyes were watery and proud. Eric opened a folder. "I'm reinvestigating everything from scratch, and I think we found something." He explained that a neighbor, Mr. Long, lived behind the Millers. He'd been abroad for months during my trial. His security system uploaded footage to a cloud account automatically, so none of it had been touched. And a new camera he'd installed before leaving captured part of the Millers' porch. My heart was pounding. A few days later, Eric returned with a laptop. We sat in a tiny room while he played the video. Timestamp, 9:24 p.m., not 8 p.m., not even close. The footage showed Susan walking up her driveway alone, texting, relaxed. No fear, no rush, no one behind her. Then at 9:32 p.m., Mrs. Miller's car pulled up. A bit later, I walked out with my backpack, heading calmly to my car. No chase, no panic, nothing. Eric paused the video. "Her story that you cornered her at 8 and she fled upstairs? Impossible. She wasn't home." My mom covered her mouth and whispered, "I knew it. He wasn't done." He pulled router logs. They showed Susan's phone connecting at 9:25, mine disconnecting at 9:35, perfectly aligned with the footage. As I stared at the screen, Eric closed the laptop. "We're filing to overturn this, and this time, they won't twist it." 2 weeks later, I was back in court. I wore regular clothes, not prison khaki. My mom's hope practically held me upright. Susan sat with her lawyer, pale. Mrs. Miller avoided my eyes. Eric presented everything, the footage, the router data, the contradictions. Then he did something no one expected. He called Mrs. Miller to testify. She looked torn. Eric spoke gently. When you came home that night, did Susan appear frightened? Ned? She shook her head. No, she was in her room. I thought she was sleeping. Did she tell you anything about an attack? No, not until morning. Did anything seem off? She swallowed. She seemed more angry than scared. Eric turned to the judge. So the supposed victim showed no fear, made no immediate report, and gave a timeline contradicted by physical evidence. He replayed the footage. Here she is arriving alone. Here Mrs. Miller arrives. And here is Cameron leaving calmly. No confrontation of any kind. When Susan took the stand again, she tried to stay composed. But when Eric asked why her timeline didn't match, she froze. I guess I mixed up the time, she said. An entire hour? Eric asked softly. Or did you lie? Her eyes filled with tears. I didn't mean for this to happen, she whispered. Eric stepped closer. Then why say it at all? Her voice cracked. Because he rejected me. He embarrassed me. I just wanted him to notice me. I didn't think it would go this far. The room went silent. The judge looked furious. Are you admitting your testimony was false? She nodded, crying. Yes. The judge slammed down his gavel. Conviction vacated. Cameron Carson is hereby released. The district attorney will file perjury charges immediately. I didn't move. For 7 months I had imagined that moment and now I couldn't process it. They took off my shackles right there. My mom threw her arms around me, sobbing, You're free, you're free. My dad was in the back. He didn't say a word. Just walked out again. Outside, the world looked brighter than I remembered. The air felt alive. Freedom didn't feel like justice. It felt like finally taking a breath after months underwater. But freedom wasn't the end. Over the next year, Eric and I fought a civil case. Months in, he called me. They want to settle, he said. Money and a non-disclosure agreement. I didn't hesitate. No. They want you quiet. I said no. He smiled. Good. Almost a year later, we went to trial. This time I wasn't the scared one, she was. Susan showed up wearing black fake tears, trying to look like the victim again. She claimed the internet ruined her life after the truth came out. Eric stayed calm. He didn't get dramatic. He just laid out the facts. Footage. Logs. Her own confession. Then he asked her one question. Did you file a false report against my client? She whispered, yes. And did that lie put him in prison? Another yes, barely audible. That was enough. No grand speeches needed. I won. The damages didn't matter. What mattered was the truth finally being louder than the lie. People stopped whispering. Some even apologized. Teachers, neighbors, people who treated me like I was filth. I never said much back. 7 months of hell doesn't fade with sorry. My dad never came around. Word spread that people mocked him for abandoning me. He couldn't handle the shame. Within a month, my mom filed for divorce. She told him she'd never forgive him for picking gossip over his own son. She moved into my grandmother's old house, the one she'd given me after he kicked me out. We'd sit on the porch some nights, eating simple dinners, barely speaking. She'd say she was proud. I told her I owed everything to her. I stayed in that house, fixed it up piece by piece, patched the walls, repaired the roof, cleaned out the garage. Working with my hands made sense again. I started buying junked cars, repairing them, selling some. Some days I worked until midnight, covered in grease, feeling more human than I had in years. And sometimes I'd hear Rudy in my head. Don't let the truth die just because they buried you. He was right. 7 months of my life were stolen by a lie. But now that lie was gone, buried for real, and the truth finally survived. If you enjoyed this story, hit that subscribe button. It helps a lot and lets us bring you more stories like this. Thanks for watching.